The 6 people screamed in pain as Hex's invisible needles pierced their brains. With a bloodthirsty smile, Hexie asserted her control over them, turning them into obedient puppets. As they knelt before her, she commanded them to follow her orders. After instructing them to guard Li Su, Hexie noticed something odd about Wet Nurse Chen's pulse, hinting at a mysterious past injury. The 6 people rejoiced in their hearts, maliciously imagining what will happen in the future. But they weren't going to find out, since, without anyone noticing, Hexie had already raised her left hand. 6 invisible needles lay between her slender fingertips. Her internal energy burst forth, propelling the needles to fly forward. In the blink of an eye, they entered the heads of the 6 peoples. Ah! The 6 people uttered a pained shout, feeling something cold drill into their brain. Johnson suddenly lifted up his head and looked at Hexie with fear. What did you do to us? Hex's finger gently fiddled with the barbed whip, the corner of her mouth revealing the hint of a bloodthirsty smile. In this world, there's no oath that can be trusted. There are only soulless and mindless puppets that you could trust to never betray you. Well then, what do you think I'll do to you? You want to extract our souls from our body? Johnson and the others' eyes filled with shock and fear, as well as a deep resentment towards Hexie. Loathsome girl, you will The sharp pain in their brain spread in a flash, eroding their brain's nerve. The 6 people desperately wanted to struggle and resist, but the control they had over their bodies had disappeared. The method Hexie used to create the puppets. Naturally, it wasn't the one of extracting souls that was usually used in this world. That was truly something that went against morals and the order of heaven. For the person that had their soul taken, not only was life as a puppet irreversible, they would also never be able to reincarnate. Hexie only needed to use the invisible needle to control their brain domain, then feed them some special medicines to make their consciousness vague, resulting in them only being able to listen and obey her orders. As long as Hexie was willing, the brain domain restriction spell could be removed, returning them to their normal state. Half an incense stick later, the 6 people, that originally had sinister expressions, had now become calm, their eyes lifeless and their faces expressionless. Hexie coldly gazed down at them as they crawled to kneel on the ground at her feet, respectfully kowtowing and saying as one, "Master." Hexie then ordered them, "Remember, from now on, anything that happens in this small courtyard, you're not allowed to spread outside. That includes informing people from Nolan Manor." "Yes, Master." "In addition, if I'm not here, consider Wet Nurse Chen as your master. You have to make sure to carry out her orders." Did you all hear that clearly? The 6 people, as one, responded with a yes. Without a trace of rebellion, they paid their respects to Wet Nurse Chen and saluted her. Hexie waved a hand. "Now all of you can withdraw. About Li Su, find him and guard him strictly, and don't let him die. In a while I have something to ask him." After ordering them to withdraw, Hexie turned around, coming into contact with Wet Nurse Chen's shocked-filled watery eyes. Hexie held up Wet Nurse Chen's hand to feel her pulse, preparing to examine the condition of her injuries, but suddenly she stared blankly, confusion appearing on her face. "Wet Nurse, was the meridian of your cultivation base forcibly destroyed by someone?" Wet Nurse Chen's eyes suddenly opened wide with shock, her face expressing surprise and confusion. When her cultivation base had become crippled, Miss was simply too young to remember it happening. Moreover, to go through more than 10 years with eating only the dirty crops, her spiritual roots had long ago been destroyed, her Danton no better than an ordinary person's. Because that person had used a highly skilled method, common doctors couldn't treat it. Not to mention that even the symptoms of the illness were invisible. In the beginning she had held on to her hope of finding someone in the streets to cure her illness, but even the student that aided the doctor of Yanjing City's court was helpless. Since then she had given up. But why would Miss know about it, and mention it now? When Wet Nurse Chen recalls Hex's behavior recently, she couldn't help but be shocked yet happy. Tears emerged from the corners of her eyes. "Miss, you cultivate now. In the end, where you go these 2 days, did you suffer a lot of hardships?" Wet Nurse Chen's reaction made Hexie somewhat startled, thinking of her sudden changes. Would they make Wet Nurse Chen regard her as a strange person? Her expression slightly gentled. She considered for a moment what she could say about her past 2 days' experience. "Wet Nurse, You just need to remember, the previous Nolan Hexie has died. From now on, I'm not the trash that was always bullied and humiliated anymore. Anyone who dares to bully us, I will not let them off, even people from Nolan Manor." Although she didn't know if she was able to cultivate or not, but she, Hexie, will not undervalue herself. She would never willingly be useless trash. If she didn't have any qualifications to cultivate, she will find other ways to become strong. This old servant really is useless. To actually let Miss suffer. Wet Nurse Chen's tears poured down her cheeks. She constantly wiped at her tears, saying with a trembling voice, "But it's really good that Miss can now cultivate really good. I knew Miss is not trash." Madam had said before, "There will be a day where you will bloom with a shining light." Certainly, Madam blessed and protected Miss. Woo woo. "Miss, this wet nurse is very happy for you." Hex's heart still has some doubts. Wet Nurse had said, "A day where Nolan Hexie will bloom with a shining light." What does that mean? Also, how could Wet Nurse Chen so easily accept her transformation? However, Hexie tossed this matter to the back of her mind, and instead focused on taking Wet Nurse Chen's pulse. "Miss, you don't need to worry about this old servant. For me, this lowly life, this injury is simply nothing. I've long become accustomed to it." That Nolan Hexie never learned any medical techniques. How could Wet Nurse Chen not know that? Now it seems like Hexie was taking her pulse for half a day, her expression serious. Wet Nurse Chen began to feel helpless, so she started to comfort her. "If Miss doesn't feel assured, tomorrow I will go to the city to find a doctor to get some medicine. I'll certainly be fine. This wet nurse wants to see you become the brilliance of Jinling country, and see you get married." Here, when poor civilians needed a doctor, they would all visit whatever traveling doctor was in the area. Hexie heard Wet Nurse Chen's words, and her heart felt touched. She gently placed Wet Nurse Chen's hand down, smiling shallowly. "Wet Nurse can rest assured, your injury is not too serious. I can help you heal it." Wet Nurse Chen thought Hexie was talking about finding a doctor to help treat her. She was unaware that Hexie had been accurately taking her pulse, planning which medicine ingredients to use, and what prescription would best treat her illness. "All right, this old servant will believe Miss. Miss, you must be tired. It would be better to go to the East Wing to get some rest." The East Wing was originally a place where Butler Li and his mistress live. Zhang San had since been sent there to instruct the servants over there to move out. The courtyard that Nolan Manor had arranged for Nolan Hexie was ruined and desolate, to the point that a person would be at a loss to see it. But this East Wing that Butler Li had occupied, that can actually be considered well arranged and exquisite. The bed that had been sorted out for Hexie was soft and comfortable. There were no valuable furnishings in the room, but that could be easily fixed. By the bedside there was a fairly simple and elegant dressing table. Hexie had been feeling tired for a day since the former's body was particularly frail. Now that things had calmed down, she could feel pain throughout her body.